Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to have a Labor Day special, Labor Day 2023. We're going to be building a local in East St. Louis, and we're going to take that local all the way down to Murfreesboro, Illinois. So it's actually going to be a pretty busy local today because it's fall harvest season. So we're going to have quite a few grain hoppers on the train itself. So the setouts, we're going to have 3 empty grain hoppers for Redbud, 1 empty grain hopper for Baldwin, 1 empty for Percy, and 1 empty for Ava. We're going to be having 2 box cars loaded of paper for Sparta Printing, and 2 empty box cars that we're going to be dropping off there at Spartan Printing in Sparta. We're also going to have a loaded lumber for Murfreesboro. And for pickups, we're going to have 2 loaded grain hoppers at Redbud, 1 loaded at Baldwin, 1 loaded grain at Percy, and 1 loaded grainer at Ava. We're going to have 2 box cars full of comic books at Sparta Printing in Sparta. We're going to have 1 empty oil tanker at Percy, and we're going to have 1 empty lumber at Murfreesboro. So I do have a serious question as I'm getting ready to start this. Is there any order to how trains were built? As I've been looking online, one of the things I see is that people, as they're speaking about this issue, they're saying they're going to be putting the closest cars in the makeup next to the locomotive, making it much easier for the conductor. However, that seems to be very modern because, of course, during the 70s, the conductor was in the caboose. So I can't help but wonder, is the train order inverted so that then the next cars are next to the caboose? However, even that, I'm not completely convinced. I remember watching a video a while back from DJ of DJ Trains, and he was talking about on how the idea of a nicely assembled train is kind of a model railroader's fictitious, that basically, there's that human element to it as well. And, as I'm imagining today, the yard crew may be tired, they may not care, they may have some sort of rivalry with the local crew, or with a long-standing joke, making the conductor and the brakeman work as much as possible. So, this is railroading, and it's human. I love watching videos where train crew members are having arguments with the dispatcher. That the engineer, the hogger, who's been working for the railroad for 30 years, is there yelling at the dispatcher, who's brand new to the job. Hold on, wait a minute. You want me to park my million-ton rock train here on this siding, despite it being on a grade? I'm never going to be able to get the train going from here. My train is underpowered to begin with all the cost-cutting measures, and you think I'm going to be able to get the train moving? Do you have any clue where I'm at? That's railroading. And I think sometimes we as modelers kind of forget that human element to railroading. Cars get lost. Tempers are flaring up with train crew members and dispatchers. I admire people who work for the railroad. Think about everything that they go through. Long hours, there's the furloughs, there's the eating of the per diem meals, there's overnights at the hotels, there's breakdowns at the middle of nowhere, vans are picking you up when you've reached your maximum hours of service in the middle of nowhere, despite the fact that you've sat at a siding for the last 3 hours waiting for a train that's not seeming to ever come. That is railroading. Or you've been a train crew and you've been working for the last 20 years, and yet you're under constant surveillance by young whippersnappers right outside of college who've read a manual but couldn't operate a locomotive to save their life. That is railroading. So that's kind of one of the things I always want to capture in my model railroad, kind of that human element. So today, as I'm building up the train, I do have my switch list, but my train crew at the yard really doesn't care. I don't know why, but they're just going to throw the cars that are needed together on the train and just let the local crew sort it out on the fly. So without further ado, we're going to start building the train here in East St. Louis. So our local yard workers have got the switch list and they're going to start building up the train. First thing they're going to do is they're going to go ahead and grab 3 cars that are ready to go to be put into the train. There's a box car, the loaded lumber, and an empty grain. These are in the far back track there. Alright, speaking of railroading, the coupler was broken and had to be replaced, so train crew had to take care of that before they could even get going on their job. The train crew next is going to be going and getting 2 empty hoppers in the middle track there and bring forward. And you can probably barely see it in the back, but the train is backing up and picking up the grain hoppers now. They'll pull those forward and attach them to our train in progress. Okay, these hoppers are being brought back to attach to the train. As the yard crew is looking at the switch list, they realize that a couple of the grain hoppers are not in this yard. They were unfortunately put in the other yard in East St. Louis. So this train crew is going to have to go over, the yard crew is going to have to go over and pick them up. So they're going to actually be moving what's built of the train into another siding, and then the locomotive and the transfer caboose will go over by itself to the other yard so they can continue building this train. Our locomotive will now go and pick up the transfer caboose. Okay, the train is coming, the locomotive is coming to pick up the transfer caboose as they're going to the secondary East St. Louis yard. Dispatch has been notified that the train will be leaving the yard, is seeking clearance to occupy the main while they go and pick up the needed empty grain hoppers. Clearance has been given by dispatch. Train is going to depart. To get a better view of the train, we ended up climbing an abandoned building in East St. Louis, so we ended up missing the train being put together. They're going to be going and taking these hoppers back to the other yard to continue to finish building up the train there. Train will be backing up through East St. Louis. Okay, the train now has to grab 3 boxcars. Train's going to go ahead and locomotive's going to go ahead and grab those right now. Our local crew has showed up. They're ready to board their engine. For the sake of brevity, I did not show the boxcars being added to the train, but our train crew here at the yard crew, they're basically just about done building this train. They're just going to go ahead and move a few more hoppers on the train. Our yard crew has more work to do. They're going to be pulling away now. Now that they're moving out of the way, our local train crew is going to be getting their locomotive attached to the train and perform their brake test. We just went and grabbed a sandwich while the train crew got their locomotive and caboose added to the train, reviewed paperwork, and conducted the brake test. Stay tuned for part 2.